Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security.
My guest today on the Cognitive Crucible is Dr. Barton Boyd Brown. He is a retired U.S. Army Information Operations Officer and president of Lexington Solutions Group. As a member of the first cohort of Army Information Operations Officers, Dr. Brown has planned and executed I.O. for conventional and special operations forces in Afghanistan, Iraq, the Balkans, and around the globe. His military I.O. assignments include service at the Land Information Warfare Activity as a Field Support Team Chief, and later as the J3 Information Operations Division Chief for Joint Special Operations Command. Upon retiring from the Army in 2006, Dr. Brown joined Booz Allen Hamilton, where he supported clients across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. In 2014, he founded Lexington Solutions Group to provide national security, strategic, communication, and management consulting services to both government and commercial clients. Boyd Brown, welcome to the Cognitive Crucible.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. It's good to be here today.
I'm hoping that, for starters, you could give our audience a little bit more background about your career. You're obviously an early information operations officer in the Army, and maybe some perspective on how information operations has evolved over the last, say, 30 years.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Interestingly enough, information operations didn't exist when I first joined the Army in the middle 80s, or if it did exist, it existed in the highly classified arenas, sort of what we refer to as behind the green door. I started out my career as an infantry officer, served in Germany and at Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division. And after those first few assignments, I had gotten married and we had a couple of small kids. And so I accepted an assignment as an exchange officer at the Air Force Academy as an instructor in the Military Art and Science Department. And by that point, it was the middle 90s, and this whole information operations business was becoming more publicly discussed. The Army established the Functional Area 30 Information Operations career field in 99, which just happened to coincide with my promotion to major and my time to move on to my next assignment. And I was just completely fascinated with what I had read in the information operations and information warfare space, and elected to leave the infantry and move to the information operations career field. And it was a great move, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it has, quite frankly, put me where I am today, making that move.
Outstanding. So, missing in the biography that I just read a moment ago, you're also one of the founding members of the Information Professionals Association, and I would love to get your perspective as well on the founding of IPA. Why we are all about creating a whole of society or a whole of government effort to counter the information problem that we are in the midst of. But I'm hoping that you could tell a little bit more about the founding of IPA and the importance.
Yeah, absolutely. IPA was conceived of over the course of several years by some of us who were members of the Association of Old Crows, which is an organization that's really focused on electronic warfare. And IO, or the information professionals, did not truly have a sort of a home organization. And we had sort of gotten together in many cases in Old Crows, but decided that we wanted to form our own organization that was focused more broadly than just the military information problem. And we made a very deliberate effort from early on to include members of academia and folks from the commercial space as well. We're still making advances in that arena. IPA at the moment is a bit more military heavy, frankly, than we'd like, and we are always looking for folks who don't necessarily have a military background, or if they do, they've moved on to the commercial space and they operate in marketing, advertising, film and media, and other portions of industry that very definitely have cognitive security information challenges that they're tangling with, but they're not military, because we always benefit from adding more perspectives to the problem.
Yeah, thanks for that. And of course, the audience can go to information-professionals.org and find out more information about IPA, how to join, and et cetera. So the topic of today is deception technology, and deception has a long history, long military history, which precedes today's information problems. But there are all kinds of ways that militaries have historically used clever ways to deceive the enemy into thinking one thing when in fact something else is true. Could you give a little tour of historical military deception with some examples that might help cue up the follow-on discussion about deception technology today?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's spent any time studying military history understands that deception is as old as armed conflict. From something as simple as throwing a rock through the trees to distract somebody in caveman combat. Throughout history, there are examples of deception employed to create advantage where one doesn't exist, to create a picture that a force is larger than it actually is, or smaller, or that it's moving when it's stationary, or stationary when it's moving, or that you have either amplified capabilities or reduced capabilities, and literally being able to alter your adversary's understanding of reality is what deception's about. And of course, as warfare and technology have advanced together, there have been a whole bunch of different technologies that have been either specifically developed or adapted for the purpose of deceiving an adversary. Camouflage netting is one that comes to mind immediately. A lot of these became highly popularized in World War II, and there are numerous books and movies on deception that or that make reference to deception, and the technology always seems to be a component. So inflatable tanks, trucks, aircraft that I think many people have seen photos of from the World War II era. Things like freezing a parachute harness in an ice block so that you can drop a parachute behind enemy lines. The ice block melts, and then it appears that there have been paratroopers that have landed in an adversary's area.
I love that one. That's so clever.
Well, and it's simple. And that's one of the keys to any deception activity is the more complicated it gets, the easier it is for a deception to be discovered. But I mean, other examples
and executed, I would assume.
Right. Yeah. Of course. The more complicated it is, the harder it is to execute. The harder it is to make it believable for a period of time, because that's one of the challenges. Is if an adversary discovers that in fact you're deceiving him, then your entire plan can fall apart as a result of that. But
right.
But not just technologies, but also military maneuvers such as feints and demonstrations, which are actions that are intended to attract an adversary's attention with actual forces that are moving as though they are doing something. So this is the use of real people, real vehicles, behaving in a fashion that causes an adversary to think that you're doing one thing when in fact you're planning to do something else. A great example of this during Desert Storm was the left hook that I think was really kind of the trademark maneuver of the entire event. And as I was in 1st Armored Division during Desert Storm, and we were staging out in the desert in Saudi Arabia. When the Marines were simultaneously conducting beach landings in the North Arabian Gulf in positions that they knew they were being observed by Iraqi intelligence elements. And there were extensive TV broadcasts where the embedded reporters with the Marines were reporting on these beach landing rehearsals that they were working on, and it became very believable that the Marines were going to do a beach landing into Kuwait. And as a result, the Iraqis concentrated the vast majority of their defenses along the beachfront and the border immediately between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia that was directly adjacent to the coastline, because to all appearances, our main effort was coming through or coming as a result of a Marine beach landing. And in fact, the main effort came out of the Western Desert under cover of night through the use of global positioning systems, which had just become available in mass. Previously, it would have been practically impossible to navigate with that level of precision across hundreds of miles of basically uncharted desert. And in fact, we were able to completely surprise the Iraqis, and I think everybody saw the result through closing Desert Storm main combat operations in 100 hours, basically. So. A spectacular example of using information and deception to taint the information, the enemy's information environment, and confuse decision making on the part of the enemy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So there's a recap of historical military deception. So let's start taking this into the present day deception technologies that are being developed and deployed in support of military operations, or even in the commercial space. Absolutely.
So the work that I've been doing recently with my company, we've struck up a partnership with a cybersecurity company, and their trademark product is a deception technology product that takes these historical concepts of deception that we've talked about already and translates those into cyberspace. Because just like the military maneuvers in the physical world there is maneuver going on in the cyberspace. There is attack, there is defense, there are layers of security. There are people conducting reconnaissance and collecting intelligence and gathering other information and using that environment for communication and for financial transactions and storing data there. So there are a tremendous number of parallels between the physical world and the cyber world. And so just like deception activities and deception technology in the physical world can enhance operations in the physical world, deception technology in cyberspace can do the same. And what we've been working on specifically is capabilities that allow a user to create the appearance that their network environment is configured differently than it actually is. The old model for cybersecurity used to be that we were going to establish a firewall. We would create an impenetrable cyber barrier that no adversary could ever get through. And we very quickly discovered that that was a ridiculous idea. And over the last several years, the idea has changed significantly in every network administrator assumes that his network is going to be penetrated, and in many cases assumes that his network is already penetrated, such that we have what is referred to as a zero trust model inside of cyber networks. The idea that there are multiple authentications required, even for insiders within an environment before they can access certain information or before they can use particular devices that are on the network, requires multiple layers of authentication because the assumption that the attacker is already inside your network. The interesting thing, though, is that deception technology that allows you to create a false picture of what your network looks like allows the network defender, the network administrator, to effectively weaponize his security program. Because network security has heretofore been reactive and defensive only in nature. The application of deception technology that creates a false picture of your network allows you to send your intruder down a hall of mirrors such that he spends time, effort, and energy and resources on attempting to compromise devices that don't actually exist. The technologies we're working with right now are entirely software-based, such that they emulate the legitimate devices on the network. And if you have, for example, 25 workstations and 3 printers and a server and various Internet of Things devices connect to your network, with deception technology, you can magnify the size and complexity of your network such that instead of having 25 workstations on your network, it appears that you've got 125. And you've got numerous printers and multiple servers and dozens and dozens of IoT devices connected that in fact don't even exist. But to a network intruder who only understands what he sees from his limited perspective as a network intruder, he's trying to compromise devices that are on your network because they are in all aspects exactly replicated of the legitimate devices.
So you fascinating description. I love the Hall of Mirrors analogy. That that really works as far as painting the picture of going into a foreign cyber environment and finding yourself just completely perplexed or bewildered or going down dead ends. But you said that this is also like, weaponizing defense, and it's not so. It sounds like it's not so much weaponizing defense in that the adversary is being attacked, but rather it turns into a resource suck for the adversary. And if you're stealing time, or you're making the adversary's time spent, fumbling around your network, useless, then that is in fact weaponization.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, one of the, to not to go too far down a military doctrinal rabbit hole, but
no, let's do it.
But one of the classic purposes, of an attack is to disrupt an adversary's activities, whether that's an adversary's attack or an adversary's defensive positions or whatever. It's to disrupt his ongoing activity, and the use of deception technology as a cybersecurity mechanism does exactly that. It disrupts your network intruder's activity trying to conduct reconnaissance on the network. The other advantage that these technologies, if they're configured properly, and if you select the right deception tech partner, is that it helps you answer one of the age-old problems of conducting deception operations, and that problem is the question of whether or not your deception's actually working. Have you fooled your adversary? Because if you are the target of a deception and you discover it, a technique is to go on acting as though you believe what's happening, such that you can then defeat the deceiver's plan. But deception technology properly employed creates an alert system such that when an adversary in the cyber environment contacts one of these software emulated devices on a network, it sets off a high fidelity alert back to the network operations center, such that they understand that there's an intruder, here's what they're looking for, and here's the device that they've gone after. And it happens in real time, and it allows the network administration team to make a decision on how they want to handle that intrusion. Do they want to close ports in order to lock out the intruder, or do they want to let them continue down the hall of mirrors, such that they gain a greater understanding of what their tactics, techniques, and procedures are, what their objectives are. Are they trying to steal intellectual capital? Is this an organization, or is this seeking financial gain? Are they trying to use your organization, your network, as a jumping off point to get to one of your business partners? So you may not be a target truly at all, other than as a jumping off point. And well-configured deception tech will let you gain a greater understanding of what your adversary is doing, while simultaneously continuing to protect your network.
Well, yeah, okay, so that's all fascinating stuff, and I can imagine that there must be a growing demand for these kinds of services, not only within within military operations, but also in the private sector.
Oh, absolutely. The use of deception tech is pretty widespread across a number of commercial sectors. Frankly, the commercial business tends to lead the military in a lot of cases with regard to cyber technology. Not in all cases, but in many of those, and deception tech is it's also the case with deception technology. One of the significant challenges with deception tech and with implementing it and selecting a deception technology is having an understanding of some of the challenges with deception tech itself. One is scale. How large do you want your network to appear, and how hard is it to scale up your deception tech solution? So as you're choosing which deception tech partner to go with, that's certainly a consideration. And the other is what degree of interaction and complexity you want these various targets on your network to be loaded up with. Because if you install these software emulated traps, lures, and decoys on your network, some of them will be emulating devices that typically don't store data. They don't act as a communications hub. Maybe there's something like a printer. Maybe there's something like an IoT device that may not be a target. But in some cases, you may look for a fully operating a full OS trap that has a running operating system. It has data. It has communications records, and so forth. And so the level of complexity and the level of interaction that you expect your intruder to take with regard to certain devices on your network is another consideration. Because those two things, the question of scale and the question of interaction, have significant manpower implications for the network defender. If a deception tech is deployable at scale very easily, well, that saves time, it saves energy, and therefore it saves money. If you have the ability to have some highly interactive emulated devices and some not very interactive devices on the network, that allows you to throttle your engagement with any intruder such that you have greater control of the engagement. And again, you can choose how to shape that intruder's view of reality as they try to move around your network laterally and conduct their reconnaissance as they're moving on to whatever their ultimate target is.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Security in general, home security, business security is a cost of doing business, or it winds up being just like a sunk cost, I guess, where it's like criminals or cyber actors, I suppose, are going to be encountering these kinds of environments increasingly, and they'll probably start turning into more like a locked door. If a burglar comes up to a home and the door's unlocked, well, it's like, okay, easy pickings, I'll go on in. But if they encounter an actual locked door, then it's like, shucks, this is too much trouble for me to continue. So if a cyber actor will probably increasingly be able to recognize when they've hacked into these kinds of environments, and then they will quickly just say, this isn't going to be worth my time, I'm out of here. But in a way, that's success, but it's also a continuing of the arms race for being able to do damage in the cyber world.
Right. Well, and that despite technology's warfare over the thousands of years, has some basic principles that continue. Regardless. And I mean, the competition between, the armor and the item to pierce the armor is what we're looking at in the cyber arena. So it's the same problem, just in a different venue. So yeah.
Fascinating stuff. That's very, very interesting. Well, so to wrap up, I always like to ask our guests if they can suggest a couple of books or resources that our audience may not already know about, that has something relevant to the information environment, cognitive security. What are some of your favorites?
So I've got two for this. The first is Persuasion and Power. The author's James Farwell, and it's really a relatively recent history of influence operations and influence activities, very heavily focused on the Department of Defense. But it also spends a good bit of time talking about the role of the Department of State and national leadership with public diplomacy and strategic communication, and how, in concert with DoD, these other elements of the government come together to try to put forth a consistent message to adversaries, to friends and allies, because strategic communication and communication efforts in general are not just adversary focused. You may deceive adversaries, you may deter adversaries, but you need to reassure allies, and you need to make sure that they understand what our intentions are, and then you follow those intentions up with actions that demonstrate that we're telling them the truth. And all of that comes together in Persuasion and Power. So I think it's a good recent history of influence activities. And then the other is a bit more technical. It's a bit of a how-to, and this one's called The Elements of Influence. It's by Alan Kelly, and it is really about how to conduct influence activities. And he refers to these as plays. One of the quotes from the book is, "You run plays and plays are run on you." And he breaks down a number of different techniques and tactics for deceiving, confusing adversaries in order to influence their behavior. And it's a fascinating book, and it's like I said, it's a very technical how-to sort of approach to exertion of influence.
All right. Oh, outstanding. Those we will have links to those in the show notes. And with that, Boyd Brown, thank you so much for being on the Cognitive Crucible.
Well, thanks, John. It was a lot of fun.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.